Six Bayonets, comrade. This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid. Every Saturday, noon to 1, 1410 AM WRMN on the Fox River Valley Media Network. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Call into the studio number, 847-931-1410, or better yet, text, because our studio number is going to be unavailable today because I can't handle that, right? So just text in at 505-926-1410. That's 505-926-1410, or hit us up in the YouTube Live comments. So WRMN 1410's YouTube Live channel. All right, Paul, I'm really concerned about today.
Why?
Because it just scares me, and I shouldn't be scared. Or it actually makes me paranoid. I don't have a fear for my own safety. Let's put it this way. It upsets me of what is allowed to happen and what some people are capable of. And I don't want to talk about right now a single trigger puller on anything, on violence. What I want to talk about is manipulation of people. The most vulnerable people being manipulated for what I believe is simply the entertainment of some sociopathic, narcissistic psychopaths. And so people, I base this on my police experience, 27 years as a detective, and working child abuse cases, working with, children on child abuse cases. Domestic violence, a lot of psychological manipulation going on with that stuff. And also 38 years human intelligence experience, along with 10 years where I worked as psychological operations during that time. And I'm not going to talk about anything classified, all right? I'm just going to talk about things that I know are out there and have been done. So, Paul,
Mike, and I feel real bad about, somebody that was a colleague of ours at, on a much higher level. And I've been affected by that my whole week since, I've heard about it. But, I've been talking to a lot of people and friends of mine. And, we talk about this. And, but, I remember something a long time ago that Al Tice once told me when I was
my man, Al Tice. I remember him all the time. Great guy.
Yeah, I remember going to him to do a Bible study. And he pointed out two inaccuracies in the American Bible or something like that. They said somebody in Barney went. But he said to me, in the Bible, there's a phrase that there's nothing new under the sun. Okay. And I was born in 1959, but I'm a 60s, 70s type of guy. I used to watch a lot of movies when they had free movies on the Late Show. And there was a movie that came out about 1973 or 1974 called The Parallax View. And it's got Warren Beatty in it, Paula Prentice, and a couple of things like that. And parallax in astronomy is looking at something from two different spots and trying to find out where it is. And what this movie was about, and it was an outgrowth of the 60s, because I was there. I know what happened on November 22nd, 1963. I know what happened in April of 1968. I know what happened in June of 1968. And the United States was in a poor, bad spot. And this movie's an outgrowth of that. And actually, I've been referring people to this film and referring them to the film. It's over 50 years old now. So the premise of it is that they put an ad out for certain people, maybe targeted. We would maybe think of them as fringe people, but they're not fringe people, okay? They're people that are longing for identity or longing to be, find adulation, and they give them a test. And at first, it's a wonderful test. It shows God, family, trees, and stuff like that. And then they show violence. And the ones that respond well to violence, they accept in the program. Okay. And what they do is they use this and then they reinforce it. And then they come up with this cadre. And what they are is basically assassins. Okay. And what they do is they reinforce all the negativity, but make it positive for them. But what these people don't know is they're the patsy, because they don't actually do the assassination. Somebody else in some shadow government or some international organization really does it. And then they become the one that's the fall guy, if you will, or the James Earl Ray, or the, although I think he didn't, but the Oswald guy, or the Sirhan guy, and then it ends with them, and nobody knows that there's this puppeteer, this corporate, multi-level, multinational thing out there that really did this, and we've just replaced that Parallax Corporation with our social media, with our gaming, with our if it will, our alphabet soup of networks, and we just reinforce that now, and those people now are the ones that are acting like, oh, we're not involved, but this other person is, and they're quick to put a label on the killer. They're quick to everybody's
lone killer, lone killer, loner, right, acting right, by himself.
Right, they're quick to put a label on it, and they're quick to say, oh yeah, oh he was identified at this guy's rally, or he was identified at this guy's rally. But the thing I find amazing is, within 2-3 hours, 4 or 5 hours after the incident, although this one was a little longer, everybody knows everything about the guy. They knew him. We had paper on him. He was watched, and to me, it just doesn't seem right.
He was on our radar.
Right, and it doesn't seem right. So if he was on your radar, we should have used the missile to get him. He should have been brought in, really talk to, find out what his problem is, maybe refer him for mental health treatment, and really, and that's the new thing now. It's kind of sad, because a friend of the show and a friend of ours, and I'd like to get him on one day, Marla and I and some others that we're familiar with have taken his classes on threat assessment. And we're cutting back budgets, and we're cutting back things relating to that. But that's the area now that maybe we should be concentrating in. And there's a typical pattern for these people. They live in their mother's basement. They have trouble socializing.
They live in a bubble.
People. Yeah, and they're gamers, or they're keyboard warriors out there.
Okay, so here's the thing with that, getting on with that, because going to what you said is correct. All the big government stuff and everything has been replaced by social media. Now, the key factor is it doesn't have to be the government. It only takes one person. Usually, you could be a sociopath, or they could be very charming and very manipulative to get their way, right? And one thing you could do, and this is what ticks me off the most, because it's so easily done, if you don't have a conscience that normal human beings, if you have that mental illness that doesn't let you have a conscience, but you like to see bells, whistles, fireworks, and everything else. So you go in one of these echo chambers. Right, left, doesn't matter. Echo chamber on the internet, on social media, where you only want to hear one side of the story. or you're only going to hear one side of the story, because as soon as another part of the story comes out, all of a sudden you're attacked, you're blocked, you're kicked out of this echo chamber. All right, so now you go in there and you find 1, 2, 3 people or whatever, and you assess them. Right? Now you check out these people, you check out their background. All right, you go in their background, and you're not doing it as yourself. You're doing it through various VPNs, virtual private networks, probably using free Wi-Fi at a Dunkin' Donuts or at a McDonald's somewhere, and you go in there and you might even have like 20 bots working. And the bots are just fake personalities that you created, but you have access to. It's not artificial intelligence. You're basically chatting with yourself 20 times in a chat room or wherever these echo chambers are, when you're making comments and everything. It looks like 20 different people, but it's only you, right? So you create these personalities. Sometimes they have depth of personality or whatever, and you use them to identify these people. Then you start, there's a fine edge between saying, hey, wouldn't it be nice if this happened? So I say, wouldn't it be nice? Instead of, why don't you go and do that? Right? That's more, why didn't you go do that is more like command. Where in the military, if like your commanding officer said, wouldn't it be nice if I had a cup of coffee right now? That's an implied command. But I don't think that would fly in the civilian world, because all I said was a statement. But these kids, or anybody, right? And what you're looking for is the most vulnerable, people that already have issues, right? The most vulnerable to this, the most vulnerable to mental manipulation. And you groomed them. These kids, no one says that this popped in the head a year ago, a week ago, 10 years ago. Someone's sitting there and saying, oh, this guy's ripe. He's close. Wouldn't it be, and then the key things in the current situation with Mr. Kirk is that they dropped the law enforcement dropped the thing that there was a message that the kid said he had to go pick up a rifle from a drop point. Well, who dropped it there? He didn't drop it there. That's dead drop. That's what we call tradecraft, right? So someone's using tradecraft there, whatever. And you don't have to be trained to use tradecraft. You could look it up. But a dead drop. So, a drop that only you two know about. So that says that someone else was involved here. But not just on this one, right? It's on the other ones. Now, what's great is if you have a dead offender, right? Because you can't talk to him anymore. He's dead, right? You can't suck out his brain and do a search of that. You can only go and try to find everything about him you can and try to infer what he was thinking. But he's dead. 3 men can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. He's one that's dead, right? Now, you get the living ones that are captured and everything, but they lawyer up. Right, that's their right to lawyer up. They aren't going to say anything about their situation until all their appeals are expired, are gone. Then, as they're facing a needle, and I do not support the death penalty, as they're facing a needle, the chair, a firing squad, or the rope, right? Then all of a sudden they said, listen, take the death penalty off the table, and I'll tell you who was involved with this with me. But that person might already be dead. We're talking 10, 20, 30 years before death penalty is instated. So you have anonymity. And just because you're a narcissist, a sociopath, or psychopath doesn't mean you're stupid. All right? You could be smart, and you could just be doing this. A case in point was we had a guy. He went on to the ATF's website and found one of ATF's 10 most wanted. And he had a good description of him and everything. And then he went to Evanston, and he called the ATF's hotline and says, I just saw this guy. He went into this building, and gives a perfect description of him and everything. They blocked off 2 blocks of Evanston, went in there, tried to get him, and then they realized they were being played. And this guy was just a goof, right? Then later on, he was doing the same thing, like a Munchausen's by proxy. Right. So this is my scary thing. You could say that it's the government controlling this, that it's the organizations, that's the Illuminati, that it's foreign intelligence agencies, foreign militaries, foreign countries or terrorist organizations. The scariest thing is it could just be one person finding these people. It could be multiply one person, but none of them connected. There's more than one sociopath, psychopath, narcissistic guy out there, guy or girl, all right, that are going to manipulate people to get their way. That's the scary thing. What's the defense for this? Because there's a lot of walking weapons out there that unless they're twisted, right? This isn't a defense, Tom, right? Even when you look up hypnotism, right? If you're not predisposed to do that act, it's general consensus that you cannot be hypnotized to do it unless you're already predisposed to do it. So is it a defense for this guy to say, oh, I was twisted, I was promised this, I was manipulated and everything else? The only defense I would say is, well, have you been declared incompetent by the courts? Are you not responsible for your own actions? Well, no. Okay, well, then you're responsible. So am I making sense there, Paul? Because I'm not scared of the government. I'm scared of all these individuals out there that are highly capable of twisting a vulnerable person. By vulnerable, I mean mental illnesses or emotional illnesses, emotional hurt, twisting them to do violent acts for their personal amusement.
Well, you're not wrong, but there's other problems here too. You know, from Butler, we know that they didn't really do any air surveillance of the president at the time, and you know, it was plainly seen, and there's an issue going on with that, and you know, I didn't listen to him a lot, although I listened to one of the stations he was on. Mr. Kirk used to go to universities. This was his main thing. And he would get, and that's why he was so popular with the youth. He would come to them and he would set up a forum, and you go up like the old times, like the Lincoln Douglas debates. He was bringing back civility in one way to politics and opening up to disaffected youth, which is why I think he was silenced. But there was no drone coverage of that. And, you know, I'm watching, I've watched a lot of this lately. There were people that saw this guy making his way around the roof, and everybody assumed it's the police, but nobody said, hey, do you have police up there? Nobody, you know, and then to my, you know, when you know these speakers, and there's others, it's like the university really can't stop them from coming, but they really don't want him there, and they don't care if the guy gets hurt. Like, you know, a simple thing could have been, you know, to have like a plexiglass barrier hanging down from the tent at a certain level that would either, you know, absorb the bullet or deflect it, and we don't even do that. I mean, they don't even do that, and he has his own secure. I mean, that's a horrific sight right there. To watch six guys carrying him away. They didn't even have an ambulance there, which was required by their own university and their own state. It's like everybody dropped the ball.
Well, was he? I don't want to get too deep into this, but was he paying to use their venue? Was he like saying, "Hey, I'm coming there. Here's $10,000. I want to use this venue"?
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
They have no option. They have no obligation to protect Joe Schmo walking across their university. They have no obligation.
But they're not even protecting their university students.
Yes, that's a concern.
Because, you know, the bullet could hit their own folks, just like it killed those those two innocent people at the Trump rally. So they do have an obligation, whether he paid or not. Then it should have been held somewhere else. They should have had an auditorium, or they should have done it, in a video thing where he's, But the point is, it doesn't matter. The university fell down. They stumbled. And now there's a dead guy here. The thing that makes this bad is, though, whether or not this is a vast conspiratorial assassination bureau thing, this is going to give credence to the other low motors that now view themselves as, if this goof can do it, then I can do it. And this makes everybody unsafe.
Well,
because
he got caught, right? So, and these other guys got caught, or they're dead, right? One of the mental health issues, is suicidal tendencies, right? A lot of the psychotropic drugs that treat these mental illnesses, like paranoia, schizophrenia, high anxiety, all that stuff, have a side effect of increased suicidal thoughts. So one, they want to, they don't care if they check out of the world or not. They're like, don't care. I'm going to check out. The other thing on this is those guys that, for your average human being, right, in the military, basic training tries to teach you to kill. They try to overcome, right, your predisposition not to hurt another human being. Your average human being just doesn't want to do that, right? It takes a special kind. They said 80% of the guys in Vietnam, the draftees, everyone that went over there, the first time they got in a firefight, they intentionally fired high, not on target. And that's a tough thing to fight through. What you have to do is these kids, I'm saying that the mentally ill people out there, this is my theory, all right? I'll put the theory out there, that except for the catalyst of some background entity, they would not have done that. That's my theory here. And that's what scares me, is because, every day of my life, I have to fight not to be a bad person. If I just gave up on it, I think I'm one of the worst people on earth, right? I could cause so much damage, hurt, everything else. I really could. And every day I fight against that. But I'm also a critical thinker. I could think for myself. Consider myself a little higher IQ. There are some people out there that really, they wouldn't know how to do it. They wouldn't know how to go about it. They wouldn't know how to be stealthy enough about it, how to not communicate with others about it, just how to be an independent actor, how to obtain this, how to pre-check the area. It seems that on these, I'm not talking about the assassination attempts on Trump. I'm talking about like mass shootings, school shootings, stuff like that. It seems like someone has already done the footwork and has told them, listen, this is a real soft target. Go after this one. And I'm sorry, Charlie Kirk was a soft target. And whose fault is that? Well, as you approach, and I'm not victim blaming here, right? I don't want to victim blame, right? Because if some guy I put in prison comes out and wants to start a fight with me, am I going to hire security to protect my house 7 and 24 because I was a detective and I put people in prison, right? No, I can't afford it, for one. But let's say I was some sort of big, fancy, schmancy detective and I got paid millions of dollars and I put powerful, nasty people in prison. Yeah, maybe then I should take some of that millions of dollars and provide my own security. I should have security. And you're right about the drones. A buddy of mine, suburban police officer, long time, also a detective, and he said, man, they should always have drones up there. You should Always have them. So if you're doing an event, the onus is on you, on us, right? Onus is on you to provide for your own security, not to expect, if you're at that level, and he's, I don't think we're at that level, but he's at that big level now, all right? So you have to have the forethought to know that there's a lot of challenged, ill people out there, all right, that might want to cause you harm. Now, can you rely on a university that you're not paying a dime to provide that security for you? They should provide some sort of security, right? You know, in advance as a university, all right? And we're talking about a breach of the peace, like a breach of the peace would happen, something else, right? So I know that this guy who polarized, it's a little polarization, is coming to my campus, and a lot of students are going to be there. All right, I have fair warning. Yes, I should provide some security for my students, just like you said, for the safeties there. If I'm incapable of providing that security, then I have the right of refusal, saying, listen, for the security of our students here, we can't have you here. We can't provide security and ensure our students are safe. You have to provide that security now. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, so, there's, when someone's really, really wrong, when they're really, really wrong, first thing they say is, well, there were failures on both sides. Well, what do you mean? Well, you shouldn't have let me do it. It's like, okay, so what you knew what you were doing was wrong or whatever. But that is my main thing there is you can't expect everyone to provide security for you. You get on that level. If let's say I go to the meeting of the Cook County Board, right? And I put in advance that I'm going to be up there and speak my 3 minutes. I'm just Joe Citizen there. And I go in there and all of a sudden 3 people jump me and beat me down after my 5th word. Now that's on the Cook County Board. That's absolutely on them. They should provide security for their citizens there in that forum. And they do. They search you and, you didn't search you, but you go through the metal detector. It's not that bad. That's one as a citizen. If one of these large personalities, and they make their money, they monetize their personality. They are their own product. They are their product of themselves. People advertise on their shows, all right? That's how they fund themselves. They're their product. They have a large distributorship there, right? A large, like million paper circulation. And they go into a county board. They're going to get the security from the county board, the same as everyone else. Should the county board provide even more security for them? No. But they should be aware that there's going to be issues there. Now, what I really wanted to talk about is the echo chambers they're gardens that are being harvested. Like you said, you go in there, you cast the net, you get 10 guys. Then you assess each guy for who's going to be the least, or I'm going to say the most violent guy, but that's not necessarily true because you don't have to be violent to do violence, right? But the least opposed to violence, right? It doesn't have any effect on them. The more, they're just like a psychopath, right? They're like, violence doesn't affect me. I could watch people being slaughtered all day long. But they don't slaughter people all day long. It doesn't affect them. So you find those people that it doesn't affect. And then you cut them down to the person that not only doesn't it affect them, that they're able to carry out the act. And over the internet, there are so many of them. And the only safety we have from them is ourselves. So what did they say? Oh, this kid was quiet. And did the FBI catch this kid, Paul?
He was turned in.
That's right. He was turned in by his father. His family turned him in. All right. Same thing with the Unabomber. How many years were they after the Unabomber?
About 18.
Yeah. And it was his own brother that turned him in. Once the FBI released the what did they use the word for that? Not the monologue, but
Manifesto.
His manifesto. Once the FBI released this manifesto, the brother was like, oh, that sounds just like my brother. He's kind of off there, right? But did the brother go in and say, hey, my brother's off? You know, he's a brother, you know, and this is before the internet and everything. The guy's living in a hut and everything. But
he was truly living off grid.
Truly living off grid. Everyone's on grid now. You need to look out for your loved ones and your friends more than you do for your enemies. Enemies, I don't want to sound like a Karen here. You know, I want to sound like a Karen. I don't want to tell people how to live or anything. But when it comes to my friends and to my family, I want to see these red flags, right? And I want to say, hey, don't do that. That's a red flag. Hey, we need to talk about this. That's unacceptable, you know? And again, after you work so hard then you have to get help. That what did not only do you talk to him, right? But if he doesn't listen to him, you take him to the elders of the church. And that's like a biblical thing, but you take him to other friends and you have an intervention, right? Everyone knows what an intervention is. And if he still doesn't listen, then you put him on the radar. You know, it says he's on the FBI's radar. Well, how did the FBI know about him in the first place? From the echo chambers, right? So he's on there. Everyone in that echo chamber is on the radar. They're keeping names. You know, they got warrants to look at that stuff. They're going to look at it. It's like when Snowden, all right, he said, well, look at this with the NSA, and they're getting all the metadata off these phones. Yeah, okay. So what? Everyone got upset because they thought the NSA was listening on your call. Well,
they probably already are. So what?
Don't say anything on the phone that you want. Yeah, come on. It's over the airways. Your phones aren't encrypted. You know, same thing in these echo chambers. It's not specifically encrypted. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that I, as a law enforcement officer, can't go into one of these chat rooms and just listen. I don't need a warrant. If I go into a public chat room or one of these groups on Facebook and I start making comments, or on YouTube, I start making comments, do I have an expectation of privacy?
No, but legally, if we knew somebody had a chat room or something like that, we couldn't go monitor them without a warrant, even if it's public information. So that cuts both ways, though. But yeah, no, you don't have an expectation of privacy unless you're the government and you intend to use it, and then there's an expectation that they had of privacy, and then we can't use it unless we go through some proper channels to do it.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way. If I'm in I'm a law enforcement agent, right, and I'm in one of these chat rooms, you know, looking for pedophiles or whatever, and I'm pretended to be like a 12, 13-year-old kid, right? And I make it well known that I'm pretending to be a 12, 13-year-old kid. I says, well, I'm 12, 13 or whatever. And now I get a hit, from, chumming the waters out there. Now, everything before that this guy had done that I knew about, right, before is inadmissible. But now I go to a judge and use my reasonable suspicion to get a warrant to listen further. Now, does that become everything that I get out of that chat room now because of the warrant is good?
Right.
As long as they don't quash the original warrant and say the warrant was fraudulent.
Right. Or as long as they don't somehow say that you entrapped him by what you were saying, that he never had those ideations before that, and he got them from you.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Which will be a big argument.
Defense will make an argument. It would be a big argument, and the defense can do it. But taking one of these guys off the grid, right? Taking them out of there. I'm not talking killing them, right? Separating them a little bit from society, first time, or making everyone aware of them, right? That's what one great thing about social media that the police can't do. And we talked about this doxing, right? But if the community became aware that a certain member of their community is there's strong suspicion that he's doing very bad things, they're going to dox him out there. And it's going to make it a lot more difficult for him to operate, or he's going to have to move on somewhere else, where hopefully this doesn't come back. What I'm trying to say is we need to be vigilant, just like people are with to find the predator, right? There's other predatory acts other than pedophilia, other than aggravated criminal sexual assault of a child or attempted aggravated criminal sexual assault of a child. Rape, basically. Statutory rape, call it whatever. It's rape. They don't have, their mind isn't formed enough to make consent no matter what you argue. And you have to set a numerical standard. You have to set a standard, that 18, that's adult, below 8, unless they're declared incompetent by the courts. Below 18, prima facie, they're not an adult. They have no right for consent. That's skip 2. But we go after those. There's TV shows about that and everything else. They don't really show TV shows about the groomers, the manipulators. In Israel, with their terrorist problem, these kids that were blowing themselves up, killing off a lot of people, not just shooting people, blowing themselves up. These kids couldn't tie 2 wires together to make an LED bulb flash on a battery. They couldn't do it. They couldn't replace a battery in a remote control. Yet, they have a very sophisticated explosive vest on, right? Or a very sophisticated VBED, vehicle-borne IED, right? They have this very sophisticated stuff, and they blow themselves up. Well, how did that happen? Well, there were people that were grooming them, that were supplying them, that were, getting them ready. And when they found they're ready, they sent them off into the world to do the thing, right? That happened. That was happening over a long period of time. In Afghanistan, they would grab an 8 and a 10-year-old and throw explosive vests on them, walk them to there was no grooming. There was they would just grab a vulnerable person, orphans or whatever, put vests on them and send them to the front. Down in Pakistan, in the tribal regions, they had storefronts that, let's say you were old and your family hated you and you did a lot of bad things in your life and you're a piss bum and you're broke, and you went into this storefront, they would front you $10,000, send you up to Afghanistan, you drive a V-bed into a building. And you got bonus points for your family and everything, and they got the $10,000. That's happening. That's grooming, that's where they take a vulnerable person and they use them. What do you do to the storefront that's doing that? Because it's not illegal in Pakistan. What do you do with those guys? And that happens in the third world. What happens here, again, my theory is that there are, I believe a lot of these shootings where everyone says, oh, it's government control, the CIA this, it's FBI this, it's the gun grabbers, they want to set this up, they want to set that up. I'm saying It's the one Munchausen's by proxy psychopath that wants to see the flashy lights, the news, the media circus and everything. And then he tells himself as he giggles himself to sleep, himself or herself to sleep, I don't want to be misogynistic here, all right? Himself or herself to sleep, I did that. That's what I'm really scared of. That's what I'm concerned about. And that's what I'm trying to think of. How do you defend from that? I could tell you how to defend from the government. Get rid of government. It's like, oh, we're not going to have government anymore. You can't do that, right? I could tell you how to defend from the media, right? I could tell you how the mainstream media, even social media. Think for yourself. Don't listen to them. Assume what they're telling you has an agenda. And then everything makes sense, right? When was the last time they reported something without an agenda?
They never do.
But do we got any thoughts on the boxing match tonight? Nope. Jeff's trains, nothing here. No one's calling in or anything, and we don't have the phone, so we don't got Cleveland Dennis. But I'm going to let you monologue some more, Paul.
Well, it's just real sad. I could get into this because I recently had on the just past holiday, I was with some people at a party, and I was being told how wrong I am on everything, which is a familiar theme, about how wrong I am. And then I kind of brought up what happened before this even happened. I didn't say who I thought it was, but I kind of said I kind of blamed the left side for things like this, and this was like 2 weeks ago, and I'm tired of people with agendas trying to tell me something. I don't sit there and tell them what to do. I don't tell them they have to vote for this. I don't tell them they have to vote for that. And, I would kind of agree with you, except I see it in people that would normally be normal, and they're not. I don't know. I went on a couple of websites initially, and you could call it TDS or whatever you want to call it. But these people, even educated people, they're not normal. I've even had a conversation with a friend of mine when they found out that I was doing the show, and that they were concerned. They wanted to know, had I changed, And I think they even brought up Mr. Kirk, as being extreme or something like that. And then, I had to, and I knew the person's side on everything. I never argued with the person. I said, well, I've always known you've had those views, and I know you're wrong, but I don't try to change you. I respect you. We worked together. We did cases together, and it bothered me because that somebody would think that I would somehow change. And they, I said, I've never seen. And I said, there's both trouble on the right and on the left. But the one thing I know that more so on the right, the right people are more tolerant because they believe in rights. They believe in freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And the left, they don't. They want to stamp out speech unless it's the speech that they want to hear.
But right or left, here goes with my theory, right? The great thing about, well, not great thing, but anonymity, all right? So if I do something and it could be blamed on the CIA or it could be blamed on left-wing lunatics or whatever. If I do something and they immediately say, oh, we're going to blame this, right? And no one's looking at me. I'm not the CIA. I'm not over on the other side. I'm not right, left, or whatever. No one's looking at me, but I'm giggling there saying, I got away with it because that's cover for me. That's cover. How do you hide, Paul?
You do it anonymously.
No, you do it in a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone's looking for you, get in a crowd. Unless they post your face everywhere. You know, if people went, hey, have you seen this Mike Tooman guy in a crowd of about 10,000 people? No one knows me, right? Oh, no. What's he look like? Oh, we ain't got a picture of him. We just got his name. You know, I'm saying these, like, getting up there, I think people are getting away with this stuff. I think people are really getting away with stuff. When you come to the matter of how you react to everything, right? You know, my mother used to say something about, you know, that I was at war with some grocery stores. Not at war. I wasn't hurting them or anything, but I believed that I was treated poorly in a grocery store. Something happened, and I says, hey, I don't have to shop there anymore. Nor will I shop there ever again. Even if it's a chain store and it was one person and they got fired the next day or whatever, right? No, don't matter. I'm not going back. And then the same thing happened with my mother. And now she's kind of on my, kind of like there. But she says, you're going to run out of places to buy stuff at. I says, no, I'm pretty good with one. I can survive with one. I don't need all these things. I think I got a little off kilter there. If someone was easy to manipulate, Paul, would you manipulate them just for the fun of it?
No, I think that would be cruel.
So if you got, and this, I'm trying to think of one of the things, okay, so you got solicitation, right? Solicitation to commit a crime. So if some guy has suicidal tendencies and I'm telling him, right, well, jump. That's solicitation because suicide is actually a crime. You wouldn't see anyone charged. You'd have them charged with disorderly conduct. And then, of course, they dox them and their life would be over, which is happening to a lot of people right now. Good or bad, they have their opinions. But when you stress your opinion and your personality is out there and you're working for a company that wants to maintain, even wants to be non-political, non-opinionated, we're just a company here to make money, you know, don't bring your politics into it, and you got one of your employees screaming bloody murder about something or whatever, or as a company trying to maintain a good face, hey, if their employee, they violated their employee agreement and they're gone. A lot of times the Army has bringing defamation to the Army or whatever. It's a bad, you know, they'll kick you out for that. So I'm still getting off. So, but when you come to these manipulators there, you know, there's a fine line between solicitation and manipulating. So like I said before, if I said, you know, that someone needs to go knock over that grocery store so we give the money to the poor. Right? And you just and you got an easily manipulated person, and he goes and knocks over the grocery store, and he, you know, gives you the money. He says, well, thanks, I'm poor. I got the money now. Thank you. Or whatever. Did you rob the grocery store? Did you tell him to rob the grocery store? But he's easily manipulated, but you stated, right, someone should really rob that, but you've had him so indoctrinated and groomed and everything that really every word you say to this person is in order. How do you prove that in court without calling that person incompetent, and he hasn't been declared incompetent, therefore the court can't say he was incompetent? You know, you got to accept that this guy was legal to vote, legal to work, legal to drink, legal to get married, legal to enter into contracts, everything else, up until suddenly this point where he committed that crime because he was manipulated. And because he was manipulated, the other guy that said really that candy store should be knocked over. Right? That's what I think encourages is. I'm probably overthinking it completely, but it takes a special type of person to do that. But I know they are out there. I have seen them. I have arrested them. I have looked into their eyes. They have no human compassion. They manipulate things. They manipulate other people. They manipulate children to get their way. Gangs are a big thing with that. The gangs, they take these guys, they know they're wrong. They know they're going to go to prison, all right? They don't want to take the consequences of their actions, because if they really had intestinal fortitude and manhood, they would pull the trigger themselves. But they give it to a 13-year-old and let the 13-year-old kill him, and they call it gang initiation. They're like, now the 13-year-old gets to go to prison. But no one ever locks up that guy for, solicitation for murder. Because, it's just a gang thing, right? But they're in the 10th district, they took a kid. I forget what I'm going to have to use a pejorative term because I forget what the scientific term is. Give me a second, all right?
Yeah, we're getting some comments. Govia says, both the left and the right believe in rights and free speech. It is disingenuous to act like one side owns these ideas. And I commented, all the leftists I have seen are not supportive of free speech, but they use it as a defense. And then he responded, the defining conflict in our I can't read, it's blocked.
We got a hard break coming up, Paul. We'll see you back after these announcements.
Sounds good.
I got Matt right here. He came in to do the hard advertisements. And so who do we have on the line?
Oh, morning or afternoon now.
Yes.
I'm David.
Hi, David.
Hi, David.
Yeah, I'm glad you were talking about this from the angle of theater management, the insurance policy that a speaker or a guest to the campus would have.
Oh, yeah.
I used to, for many years, I had a job working for a magazine for lawyers, studying about personal injuries and things that would happen on a campus or government land or, all sorts of different things. In public events, you invite a crowd onto your land, there has to be an insurance policy for them. And usually if there's if one of the campus clubs invites them, and especially a big name and a lightning rod kind of person, the insurance company for the campus really requires that the local club be on their toes and put together a good insurance policy and none of this fly-by-night stuff so that the taxpayers end up having to pay for the whole thing.
No, that's good.
Looking at, somebody said that normally, and I have no guarantee of this is all hearsay, but they were saying that the original contract for having him on there required that he have 8 security people, and he only had either 3 or 4 of them. And so I'm just wondering if you've heard similar issues on this, and the idea that the way you were talking about drones would have made a lot of difference.
So Dave, the attention of the show today. And, I'm glad you brought it up because you made a very valid point there about the insurance and that if he was invited on, and you usually got to be invited on, I'm sure one of the young Republicans or conservative clubs did invite him there. So you're right. There's probably a lot of insurance. But the intention of the show today, in my attention, was not so much that Mr. Kirk had been assassinated. That's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. I don't want to really center it on Mr. Kirk's assassination. What I wanted to say is that there are evil players out there beyond just the trigger puller, beyond the kid, and these other situations. And what scares me, concerns me, all right? What concerns me, because it doesn't affect me personally, all right? I don't think anyone's going to execute me or anything like that. They could, but I'm always aware of it. My head's on a swivel, all right? But what concerns me is that the anonymity, if I wish to go out there, I'm a trained psychological operations professional from the Army. I've ran psychological campaigns. I've gone through the course, right? I've read up on it. I'm also a human intelligence technician. I'm also a detective. I know how to get away with things and everything. And I'm also good with the internet, right? If I wanted to, I could go and manipulate some person, right? And make them do something. It might take a while, maybe, 6 or 7 months, and do something that I want them to do that's bad, right? And I will be totally anonymous in that, and they may blame the right wing, they may blame the left wing, but it's just me, right? I'm not saying I'm going to do that, but it could be just me. The trouble is we have, 380 million people in the United States, roughly, right? How many of them could actually do that or are actually engaged in doing those things? If I was ticked at my neighbor and I wanted I was pissed at my neighbor, I could do things and all of a sudden my neighbor would be, suffering from something and it wouldn't come back to me. Why would I do that? Because I have a conscience, right? And I have a belief system. There are some people that don't have that. Not everyone out there has a conscience. I would say the majority of people have a conscience, but I will tell you for a fact, there are people with absolutely zero conscience. All right, Dave, what's up?
Well, I'm just going to wrap up with, my wife is a real murder mystery nut. She'll read every book that she can ever read.
Well, she should read.
Almost inevitably. Pardon?
She should read my book. All right, I Married a Bot Madam. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle for 99 cents. I Married a Bot Madam.
All right.
It's a short read.
Intriguing title, yeah.
It's a good. It's an international crime thriller. I think she would really like it.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking, there's an old expression, go to the simplest equation.
Occam's razor.
Probably the truth.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor, right. And so is it a crime of passion? Is it a crime of jealousy? And I'm trying to think, the first thing I thought of when I heard about the deal was that he was touring colleges, and he's not an unattractive guy, and how many girls would swarm around him and have a jealous boyfriend that would want to get even with him for stealing his girl? And,
there's all sorts of reasons for murder, but there's no legitimate reason for murder.
Right. But in other words, sometimes the simplest thing and murder for passion is one of the most common, right?
Yeah, well, why did they go after O.J. Simpson first? Because usually when you have a divorce and you have a domestic situation, right, you always go up to one of the domestic partners first because that's, you're going to play the odds, right? So that's why they went after, what you said. That's why they went after O.J. first.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting example. And so that was one of the first things I thought of. The second angle was money. And, if I've been listening to some of the speculation this morning, and they were saying that because Kirk had not, Kirk was still asking for the Epstein file to be released. And that had really angered Trump. And there are a bunch of competitors, let's say, to Charlie Kirk's
radio show. We're getting more to Charlie Kirk now and everything. But I want you to want you to follow something.
The money.
The money. Yes, if he took out a loan from the mob, yeah, okay, whatever. But if there's enough money that he's going to be publicly executed, all right, you're not getting that money ever again. So why would you do that? Just keep him alive and get the money. All right, so
no, it didn't he take over for Rush Limbaugh? He had
I'm sorry, Dan Bongino took over for Rush Limbaugh. And then Bongino. Dan Bongino came off the radio to be with the FBI, and Vince something or other, the Vince show.
The Vince show, that's right.
He came on,
and so, but they're getting that airtime, getting that 3 hours daily on network shows, getting 600 stations.
He's a personality. That's his product. He's selling himself as a personality. He talks. People want to hear them. All right, just like people want to hear a bunch of musicians. Right? They make money because they play because people want to pay to hear them play.
Yeah, but killing the competition, that was the second angle.
Okay, no, okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good one, but I don't think so.
We know this very well, going back 100 years almost. Leopold and Lowe, the killers, they didn't do it for money. They did it to do it. They thought they were more intelligent. They were college people, scholarship types, as this boy is. And, sometimes they do it to do it. And because they have an inflated idea, I can get away with this. And he might have gotten away with it if maybe his conscience got him. But, another thing is, too, I have a friend who passed away about 2 years ago now, but he was one of the people shot at the 4th of July parade, okay? And he was there with his wife, okay? And I gotta say, in this era, doesn't matter what the policy says, doesn't matter what the contract says, I think there has to be more responsibility placed on the people holding the event and the governmental agencies. Because, it's my birthday, and I usually hear from them, and I said, Happy 4th of July to them, and I didn't hear from them. And then I watched on the news that there was a shooting, and then I said, John, texted him, John. About 8 o'clock at night, he texts me a picture, which I have on my phone, and he's laying in bed with his pants all bloody, pointing to his arm. Okay, and he got killed and you know what? His wife was more liberal and he was more conservative. He was a famous leader of the Effigies band, and all he did was watch a parade, and all he did was get shot by a troll who's been convicted. So I'll say this: death comes to us all. And it finds us all in many ways. But sometimes death is motivated by something that is truly just evil. And it doesn't matter about the Epstein files. It doesn't matter what did it. They found somebody who was receptive to something, who was,
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah, he won a scholarship. Supposed to be highly intelligent, okay? And everybody says, well, what was he doing 3 weeks ago? Doesn't matter what he was doing 3 weeks ago. Matters what he was doing at 10 o'clock on the 10th of September. I don't care who beat him in school. I don't care that his daddy called him a troll. I don't care what he did. The fact that he grew up and somehow lost his conscience, the fact that he's just nothing but a killer. And they're going to play it, he was a good boy. He had a good mother and father. His father was in law enforcement. That means butt kiss to me. He was on a roof with a rifle, okay, shoved down his pants, walking down the street looking like he was disabled, and wore a shirt that's sold by disabled veterans. Now, this was some guy that thought this out, had an escape plan, hid the rifle, changed clothes, drove 8 hours, 4 there, 4 back. Now, this is not a nut. This is not, a bizarro. This is a motivated shooter, okay? And I don't care what motivated
it. But all right, Paul, let me get back to the not Park Ridge, but
the
Highland Park shooter. All right. Don't even mention his name, but what was his sentence?
They gave him life.
Okay, so they didn't
multiple times.
All right.
But it doesn't matter.
Wait. Is he still going through appeals?
No, apparently not. He abandoned his right. But the thing is, we don't have the death penalty here. So that's another thing. There's no, it's either, if you had the death penalty, you might be able to get a deal. You might be, but we don't have it. So they control the ball. And he did that. He fired his lawyer. He was going to plead. He decides not to. You don't know what he put this guy's family through. Guy has a wife and 2 children. They're trolls, okay? And he wasn't only going there. He was going to Madison to do something else later in the day, okay? So it doesn't matter, and then he's texting people. And the sickest thing is there's women that want to date him while he's in prison. So there's a subculture out there who's deviant, and we don't know. It's
a mental issue where they're going to glob onto his fame. All right, glob onto his fame. Oh, he's a famous person.
They're just crazy.
No, well, they're a mental issue. I'm not going to say crazy, but all right. So my point on this stuff is like you give a guy the death penalty for a shooting. He's alive. He gets the death penalty, but the whole time he's not going to talk. Right? He's going to keep his mouth shut. Any lawyer's just going to say, "Shut up! I don't want to hear anything." Right? At the end, when all of his appeals are exhausted, and he's finally facing a needle, a chair, a rope, a firing squad, whatever way, beheading, the axe, the guillotine, or whatever. That's when he's going to come forward and say, listen, I have these other names to give you if you take the death penalty off. Until that happens, like you said, we don't have the death penalty. We don't have that threat. And here's another thing that I got to say for this, right? I had a case. The guy was found, I think I mentioned this before, right? He was found dead in the middle of a fenced-in, locked lot. So like 10 feet from either of the fences, he's dead. I figured he could have gone off a roof, right, into this, possible. He could have been tossed off a roof into it, possible, all right? We won't know if any bones were broken, post-mortem or whatever, until Quincy at the medical examiner's office figures it out. But the first thing I saw when I got into the fenced area to get this body, to check out the body, was that all the lividity from the blood pooling was on top. It was on top. So he didn't die there. He died somewhere else, and they dumped the body, right? And there was a very distinct tile pattern on him. Not a cheap tile, not like Metro tile or something. This was a fancy tile, right? And over on Belmont, there's a lot of chic places to drink and everything, bars, restaurants, stuff. So the way he died is he had double overdosed. It was heroin and cocaine, right? He had high levels in his system. I figured he died in some shooting gallery, right, in a bathroom there or whatever. They found him, and not wanting to answer questions to the police, they dumped him in this lot, like off the roof. Someone had to know about it, all right? But because it was originally listed as a homicide, and I took it off as homicide as an overdose, right? He had overdosed, and I had interviews with his friends and family that he was an addict, right? That he had a problem with this stuff. So, they took it off. They listed it as a overdose accidental death. But I told the commander, I says, I'd like to work the afternoon shift instead of days, because I want to go to all these places on Belmont, right? Like in plain clothes, not even telling them I'm investigating everything, but to check out the washrooms there to find that tile, to find where the guy had shot up or been shot up and went dead, because maybe we could put that place out of business, right? Someone's stealing dope out of there. Absolutely not. No, can't let you do that. Not going to do that. Because you're opening up a can of worms, right? So you got this kid there. Maybe he said he was going to talk, right? He's got multiple life sentences, but he goes to the state's attorney, says, I want to talk, but we got to, I got to have a chance for parole. And they go, nope, don't care. And they deny him his deal. Maybe in the future he'll write a book about whatever happened, right? But that kid had issues. That kid, there was no third-party enabler other than his own family. He had a mother and a father that were battling for his affections and buying him guns. That's it, all right? That's that guy there. Was he pushed to that? I think he was just soft, right? But could he have been? Tell me, Paul. Do you think someone else could have groomed him and pushed him into this?
I have no idea. I just know after that, and then I think it was, I don't know if it was before that or just after that, was the dude that crashed into the parade up in Wisconsin and near Racine. I just know that no matter what we say or what we talk about, you have to be very vigilant and cautious. And in the case of this guy up north, my friend, as I told you, he was quite an interesting guy. He came here from Europe, and his father was a distinguished professor at the University of Chicago, and both him and his brother were in this band, and they had separate bands. He was Effigy's brother was Naked Ray Gun, and he was a prosecutor, and he got his start out in Kankakee, and then he became the head of our statewide grand jury unit, for the Attorney General's office, and he was very well respected in the legal community, and being a prosecutor and everything, he made some suggestions to the state's attorney in Lake County as to how the person should be charged, because you have to understand, he was alive. He got killed in a tragic accident on his bicycle about a year and a half later. But he made some suggestions as to how the indictment should be drafted, and he was not unexperienced in murder prosecutions. The prosecution office up in Lake County just totally disregarded everything he had to say. So, I come from the system. I was in the system, and I understand that. But it doesn't mean the system is right, is good, and does what it's supposed to. And I hate to be the harbinger of that, but, I always say, now, it's really hard for me to go to a public venue now. It really is. And, I have to be really either invited by somebody I respect or something like that, because I don't believe it's really safe now, and I think it's a little bit more than what we're talking about. But you are right. He had family issues and things like that. But again, they scope it out. They know they scope it out because they find out later that they scoped it out. buildings shouldn't be open, things like that. So and it's sad. It's the 4th of July. It's America's freedom. And you have to be cautious. And I know what people are saying, we're not going to let them take that away from us. And they're right about all of that. But yet the fact that it happens, and, it happens because there's an evil one and there's evil in the world. And, it doesn't matter. The motive is a way of us justifying it or putting a way to focus on why they do it. But whatever, they still do it. And that was the beauty part of the things I did. I really didn't care what your motive was. And when I was a prosecutor, I could give two craps about what your motive was.
Diane keeps asking me, why did he do it? Diane keeps asking me, why did he do it? Because he's nuts.
But that's not a motive.
It's not, but you know what? Ultimately, okay, committing murder, right, is outside of society's norm.
It's a compulsion. He's got whatever mental illness he's got a compulsion. Whether he gets some kind of weird kick out of it, or whether it's a psychosexual thing, or whether he's just playing demented, but that's not a motive. That's what caused them to do it. But you really often don't necessarily need a motive. Motive isn't the primary thing. Now, we need us as the layman, as the juror, as society, we want to know why.
Yes.
Because it could never happen, but yet it does.
As a detective, I always wanted to know why.
Right. What's really sad is, I don't know how many people were in Butler. I don't know how many people were there. But those people probably never saw a crime before. Yet they saw the most heinous crime of all, murder and attempted assassination. These students at whatever Valley University this is, the worst thing they ever did was probably speed. Now there's 4,000 of them that saw the worst crime possible, a murder and an assassination. So you know what? That's what we have to understand. And the thing is, we have to not become desensitized to it. Because when we're desensitized to it, we will not turn the person in. Because we'll just, we'll say to ourselves, I can't believe he would do that. Why would they do that?
All right, so just what you said right there is the key to all of this. Absolutely the key to all this. Police are not omniscient. All right? Omniscient means we could see everything. We know everything. All right? This is not the little guys. Tom Cruise did the movie about, I forget the name of it because it was so,
That was predictive analysis, whatever it was.
All right?
Yeah.
This is not that. All right? What we have is a free and open society, all right? We have people there watching, people close to other people. And I was explaining to Matt a little bit on the break, right? I was saying he was exchanging emails with his roommate. This is, right now, it's inferred, right? I'm inferring this. I don't have the emails. I don't have any hard proof of this. I haven't done the in-depth thing, but I'm sure it will come out, all right? So he's got a roommate that's living with them, and he has said some things like a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, which implies that someone dropped the rifle, the dead dropped the tradecraft, all right? That person should have made a mention, because that's a red flag. Yeah. The Army taught us ad nauseum, lots of training time, because a lot of soldier suicides, right? And they said, well, you wanted to have sensitivity and resiliency training. One, don't do yourself in, resiliency training. It ain't that bad, you could tough it out. The other one is, if you see a person with the red flags, get them help. If they won't get help on their own, go to your command, right? So you're kind of snitching on them, right? snitches get stitches, but not in this case, right? You're kind of being a big brother. You're kind of being a friend, right? A lot of friends, they'll be your friend, they don't want to offend you, don't want to get you in trouble, right? But here, there's times where you have to be a real friend, you got to do that, you know? You got to say, hey, I'm going to get you help. This guy obviously didn't do it, right? And now he is going to be doxxed extraordinaire. Just wait a day, and his roommate is done for. His life is ruined, completely catastrophe, right? And society's going to do this to him, right? Which is part of society is going to say, we're not going to let you get away with not doing the right thing, right? Now, what did the kid's father do, right? Turned him in. Why? Because he could see his entire life being ruined if he didn't. If he didn't do it, he saw his whole life being over with. Now, this kid's 22. He doesn't think of his family, right? Because that's the sign of sociopath, right? He doesn't care about his family. He only cares about himself. I don't do things because it would reflect on my family, right? That's a white reason I fight not being a bad person, as much as I can, right? Because I don't want to reflect on my kids. I don't want to reflect on my family, right?
That's called a conscience. That's called being normal.
No, there's a conscience, right? And I don't want to do it. I want to do it because it's the right thing to do. I don't want to do it because it's the wrong thing to do. That's a conscience. I don't want to do it because it'll affect my family. That's a quid pro quo. That's not a conscience. That's a logical decision. Right?
Well, the other thing is this, though. The other thing is this. He drove 4 hours, went home, somehow did something, went to sleep or whatever. He's never going home again. He's never walking into that $650,000 house.
Depends on the judge on Tuesday.
Well, but he's never going to drive the Challenger again.
Oh, he had a Challenger?
You didn't think of that? Yeah, he had a Challenger.
I'm trying to think of what I was driving when I was 22. Oh, a car that was barely held together with spit and gum.
But he's never doing any of that again. And it's just like the other guy up there, the one that was involved with the university people up northwest. Again, in Minnesota. The doctoral student that goes to my theory that just wanted to see if he could get away with murder and everything. Now, prison's not so nice. He can't do what he wants in prison. Really? He didn't think about that beforehand?
Well, of course he's doing an appeal on cruel and unusual punishment.
Whatever. But he didn't think about that. He just didn't think about that. So what do? They think this is all like a video game? I'll hit some bar and then they'll reanimate? I mean, come on.
What I'm saying about this kid now, all right, and I told Dave, right? Dave was on the phone.
Yeah.
Dave, I told Dave this, that I didn't want this to get too much into the thing. But here you got a 22-year-old kid, and he's got a roommate, and the roommate's life is going to be ruined. He didn't care whether he was ruining his roommate's life. He didn't care that he was ruining his family's life. All he cared about was himself. So these are things that you should spot the kid for, that he's that way, and you should say, dude, you need help, and you should, if he doesn't get the help, you should go out there because he will ruin your life, so you better prevent him from ruining your life in the nicest way possible, which is just alerting the authorities. But even then, sometimes that doesn't work because the FBI will go, oh, we were called 6 times, and we didn't do anything about it. We talked to him, and they did it anyways, right? He was on our radar. But at least that guy would be able to say, hey, I went to the authorities. They did nothing. What can I do now? Take the law into my own hands. They told me there was no law being broken. There was no reason to be concerned. So what do I do? So he's got an out, right? You got an out to protect yourself. So all of us should be aware of this stuff. And remember, all right, if they're going to commit something so heinous, You know, I'm not talking about shoplifting a candy bar or going to the liquor store and grabbing a bottle of booze because you're 20 and you can't buy it because you're not 21 and walking out with it in your pants. I'm not talking something as minor as that, right? I'm talking about a heinous act that's might make you infamous, right? Put you in the history books, put you on here, put you on the news, everything else. Yes. Oh my God, look, I'm famous. And a lot of people who sitting there go, look, I'm famous. They're in prison. They're like, oh, look, I'm famous. And their whole family is ruined, changing their names, moving, getting tracked down, everything else. They don't care. So look out for yourself. If it's your friend that you're close to, and they have made, and you see the red flags, all right? Confront them. If you're afraid to confront them, there's another red flag, right? Go to a group that you're with, go to peer counsel, your peers, right? Bring this out to the peers and say, hey, this is a problem for all of us, because if he does that, we're all his friends. It's going to come out. We're going to look bad. Right?
Sure. Hey, did that happen in this case? I mean, he only had a couple of hours to notify the parents, I'm not sure if.
What happened was the pictures were released, and some videos were released of him climbing down off a building, right, and him walking around with a T-shirt, right. Now remember, his dad's a veteran. All right, maybe the dad bought him the T-shirt. Maybe he got the T-shirt from whatever, but it's a very specific T-shirt. It's not just a yellow smiley face, right?
Right.
It's something kind of unique. All right, so yeah, he's covering up his face a bit, but I could cover up my face and they'll still see the rest of my features. They'll see my big old nose, right? They'll see most of my unibrow. I try to get rid of that, but they'll see that and they'll go, "That's Mike." That's Mike, right? And they'll turn me in. Rightfully so. So what happened is these pictures get released, and I'm sure the family's seen them because, the stuff is the same state as them and everything. You see the news, or some family member calls you up and goes, "Hey, turn on the news." Why? Just turn it on. And then you see your kid there like that. Well, he's a suspect. At that time, he's a suspect, right? And then all of a sudden, the red flags come up in your head that you failed to notify or act on, and you're like, crap. And
Oh, by the way, I was just going to mention, you were talking motivations and things. One of the first things I thought of it was like shooting President McKinley. That's 150 years ago or something like that. And the guy that did it
1901.
wanted a post office job, and he was going to be the postmaster for some local town or something like that, and he didn't get the job, so he ends up shooting the president.
Well, those jobs back then, the jobs were assigned. What do you call it?
Syndication.
Patronage.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
They were patronage jobs.
So maybe he did something, maybe he didn't, but they already have a list of names and everything. Goes to apply for it, he doesn't get it. Of course, he's got issues. I haven't followed that one, but what happened to that? Was he killed on the spot? All I know is that.
Oh yeah, I think he killed.
No, he was getting better for a day or two, and then Roosevelt was away I think in upstate New York, and then they had to let him know that McKinley was dying. And
no, not McKinley, the guy that shot him.
Yeah,
that guy
on the spot. I think they hung him.
No, he had a trial. I think he had the trial, and he got executed within 3 months. The trial was within 30 days, and he was executed within 3 months.
All right.
Yeah, but it's like I was saying, I guess it's the Occam's razor idea that there's going to be a simpler, like you were using the expression evil, and that's why I brought up the McKinley angle, because that wasn't particularly evil. It was just jealousy, or it was about money, or something like that. And there's always,
it was a guy without impulse control that maybe his whole life depended on this. Maybe he had big, grand dreams, pipe dreams of being the postmaster of this town and having money and having this and everything. Maybe his life wasn't going so well, and he applied for that, and he thought he would definitely get it, and then he didn't get it, and his whole life was over. So, yeah, he had issues. He was a simpleton. He had a pipe dream. Did someone take him and say, hey, you didn't get hired, kill McKinley?
Yeah, there was actually a third angle I was thinking of. I used to live out, I might have mentioned this already, the idea that Charlie Kirk comes onto the campus and all the girls go swooning.
You already mentioned that, yeah, the love interest.
Yeah. So,
I don't think this guy's, I don't think President McKinley stole the guy's girlfriend. And I don't really think Charlie Kirk was that way, but yes, he was, here's the thing, yes, all right. He was iconic. Good-looking guy, not a bad-looking guy, good-looking guy, not obese, not muscular, just normal-looking 31-year-old guy, right? He had a beautiful wife. Was she Miss USA or one of the states?
She was,
right?
Miss Arizona, I believe.
Miss Arizona. He had a beautiful wife, and he had 2 children, and he had money. He had fame. All right, he had his own company working and everything. Yes, I could see a lot of people being jealous of him, right? Oh, my God, look at that guy. A lot of times I feel that people are successful because they're in the right place at the right time, and boom, all right? They get success, and they were just lucky. It was like hitting the lottery. It was as simple as hitting the lottery. Other times people have really got to work for it and everything, all right? And some people can't see that. They get jealous and they think everything is a lottery. This guy won the lottery. How come he's got that and I don't? Either you weren't in the right place at the right time, your time hasn't come, or you're not working hard enough. Yeah. Jealousy, jealousy is a nice one, but it's not like Jodie Foster and what's his name? Don't even mention him, right? He was like, if only I could get her attention.
Travis.
Right.
Yeah, he's
You talking to me?
I was just going to wrap up with the idea that the simpler equation is quite often the real motivation. And right now, to listen to hate radio, they're all ranting about they're going to have to come after Democrats and take the gloves off, and they're trying to kill us, and they're all demons and this and that. That's
the dumbest thing in the world. Dave, we talked about this. I talked about this with the Epstein files, all right?
Sure, yeah.
It's a stink bomb, all right? You don't want to do that. We should take the gloves off. No, don't threaten anyone with violence. Violence, no. That ruins you, right? I am not one of these guys that's going to say that we need to take the gloves off and really punch it out and really behave the way they behave. No, because then we're them, right? We're not going to behave that way because that's not in our nature. Anyone that's spewing, like you say, hate radio, I call it, a lot of screamers there. Anyone that's saying that's not right, because what if it was, what was done specifically to get that reaction? What if that's the reaction they wanted? We killed Charlie Kirk. Watch the right go all insane and burn down cities, and it hasn't happened. And anyone that advocates for violence or for doing something that is wrong, that you said is wrong, that shouldn't be done that way, and you go around and do it yourself, okay. When Trump started using, I mentioned the person, I'm getting political. That's just, Dave, we don't want violence. We don't want you call it hate radio. Yeah. I have another word for it, right? But I'm glad you listened to it because you're not in one of these echo chambers. So, Dave, I know I know you're more of a central guy, all right? We've talked to you before, all right? You're a central guy. You're not in an echo chamber. You're seeing both sides.
Well, one of my great-great-great-grandfathers signed the Declaration of Independence, and we always were raised to understand that the Tories were always tricking us into doing the wrong thing. And actually, I don't know if you know it, but in 3 weeks' time, they're going to have this government shutdown, and we need to get a budget together, and that means getting all Americans together to have a budget.
God, I hope the government shuts down.
They want to shut the government down.
I want it shut down.
Well, I don't.
I do.
This is our property. We need our property fixed.
What? I want them shut down because if you shut them down for 3 weeks and people realize that, oh, that wasn't so bad, they lose all their power. So you know what? Don't worry about the shutdown, Dave, because it probably won't happen because both sides are worried about losing their power over the people. The threat of you can't live without government. Why, yes, you can. You can live without government. It's easy. Ask the Unabomber.
Well,
you can live without government. You don't. This stuff you have local, right? If the federal government shuts down, you got the local government. You got the state. All right, we're a republic. Go ahead, Paul.
Mark, I'm just going to say this, and I'm doing this a little bit facetiously, but every Sunday we usually live without government. So, all the government offices are closed, no mail, no this, no that, can't get certain departments. So, how bad could it be? Every day will be a Sunday then for a while.
Yeah.
Well, they have dam inspectors. They have.
No, I understand. I'm being facetious, but generally the things that we're worried about in a shutdown aren't available on a Sunday anyway. And so, we get along with it without it 1 day a week now. So even if it went for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, I don't think the world's going to fall apart.
Here's how much the government's concerned about those dams, all right? Because they were concerned about a government shutdown and the dam inspectors and the dam's not getting inspected and the dam failing. They better double up their work and put people on overtime before the shutdown and get everything inspected so that when the shutdown hits, it's all inspected already. That repairs are going to be put in, all right?
Yeah, you would think.
You would think. So guess what? They're not concerned. Oh, climate change. I'm going to buy climate change. The oceans are going to rise 20 feet. I know, I'll buy a $40 million beachfront property. You think they believe it? Nope. Look at their actions versus what they say.
Yeah, I've been calling the real estate shows, down in, I'm calling you from San Francisco, and they're saying the ocean's rising at the rate of 2
How long you been in San Francisco, Dave?
Oh, 30-something years. But it's...
All right, so, Dave, I went to DLI San Francisco on the old Presidio San Francisco.
Oh, I think we talked about that. Yeah.
I stayed in the old VA hospital. We would run the bridge every Thursday.
Sure. Yeah, I think we talked about that and whether you went down to Monterey School down there.
Yeah, Monterey was the first time. San Francisco was the second time.
All right. Well, the bigger picture, though, is that we, the people, own the property, and an April 15th money is supposed to maintain the fixing of it. And if we don't have all of these emergencies all the time, then we'll have a small budget. And every time you turn around, there's a new emergency to have new cost overruns. And, the idea that we would slow and steady have a budget and have that budget last February instead of, coming up 3 weeks, these old boys love having the emergencies because it allows them to do the cost overruns.
Well, yeah.
That to me is the bigger scam about these government shutdowns.
It's all a scam.
We need a slow and steady repair.
They have on-bidded contracts. Some government agencies spend money that they're not even budgeted for. They just spend the money, and then it comes time for the budget to pay the bills, and they go, hey, if you don't pay this bill, we're going to shut down the government. So then we go into the deficit again, which raises the deficit and then the national debt, which raises the national debt because we deficit spent because they spent money without authority. Dave, 100%, there should be a balanced budget. That's flat out it. And if you have an emergency, then and only then do you sell a bond for that emergency, but the bond has a limited, and on the next year's budget, you got a budget to pay off all that money. We should be carrying no interest. No interest. It should all be, bam, paid. If we have an emergency and we got to pay it, it's like, oh, I got to use the credit card because it's the end of the month, right? And I'm short of money. Well, the next month, I pay off that credit card bill and I take it out of my budget for the next month. Yeah, I'm all for that. You know what you would do, though, Dave? You would crash the world economy. Because every third world country out there is highly invested in the United States, and especially China. If it wasn't for us paying the interest on our debt that they bought, right? They couldn't run their country. A lot of these countries run strictly off the interest that they're paying on our bonds, which we gave them foreign aid. They bought our bonds. Right? We give them foreign aid to buy our bonds. We're paying them interest on money that we gave them. And
yeah, well, the bond rating is what's being ripped apart lately because we're so erratic. We're not getting our act together, and the bond rating went from AAA all the way down to, was it A+ now?
I don't know what the U.S. bonds are. I don't own any.
Yeah, America is paying higher interest rates on the bonds. The bond interest rate. Credit rating.
No, the bond interest rate is, the reason it fluctuates is because the government prints up these bonds and then they auction them off. They auction them off, all right? And the interest is paid based on the auction. So if the government if people want U.S. bonds, all right, they pay a higher premium. All right, and then they get less interest on them because people want them. If people don't want them, the government still auction them off, but now they're getting higher interest rates because again. Terrible, yeah. I'm still working on my GED, but I know a little bit about that, and it's not the credit rating that affects our bonds. It's what people are willing to pay for them.
The auction price.
The auction price.
Well, yeah, but that still has to do with whether or not it's slow and steady leadership or whether it's somebody who's just bouncing around like crazy, coming up with 50% tariffs on tiny countries. You know, America's reputation is being ripped apart by just erratic behavior.
Dave, what you call erratic, someone else calls steady. Someone else what you're calling erratic right now, someone else is going to call we call it common sense. Common sense. Hey, you want to open up the housing market? You want to open up the housing market and have more houses available and more affordable houses? Get rid of the people that aren't supposed to be living here because they're living somewhere. Once you get rid of them, they're not living there. And the people that own those properties aren't getting money from the government to keep the people there. So now all of a sudden, they have to rent the properties out. Just like the bonds, if there's too many apartments available, they can't charge exorbitant rates. They have to go and auction those, quote, auction the apartments off at a lower rate to get people in there, because otherwise they sit empty and they still have to pay maintenance and they still have to pay property taxes on that and insurance, right? So if the apartment's empty, they're not getting any money. So get rid of the people that aren't supposed to be living there, that the government seems to be paying for, not through my choice. And now they're going to have to lower the prices to get people in there, and then people get in there. You know, people have more disposable income for them. So what you're saying about erratic is someone else's common sense. Got something, Paul?
Yeah, I want to say something. Yeah, I was watching. Oh, we're going. Do I have like a minute?
Yeah.
I was watching Terry Savage, and she was saying that, you know, they're getting all this money in from the tariffs, but nobody knows where the money's coming from. And I mentioned this to an acquaintance, and I got into a big fight with him. And he told me I was crazy, you know, because all this money's coming into the country. Well, last week during the show, I told you I had an item come in from overseas, and I didn't pay the tariff on it, and neither did the shipper. So where's it coming from? You know where I think it's coming from? the countries that are sending it. I think to preserve their economies, they're paying it.
Yeah.
They're not charging their businesses.
Well, they're saying the reverse of that is they're going to say, well, the countries are raising the price of it because they got to pay the tariff. So in the end, you're the taxpayer paying it.
I didn't pay anymore, and the shipper
Of course you
didn't pay
did, because they can only, you're going to buy it from someone else. If they raise the price, they're in competition with someone else, and they're going to say, we can't raise the price, they'll buy it somewhere else. So they keep the price the same, and then they eat the tariff, and guess what, Paul? They're still making a profit, otherwise they wouldn't have sent that to you.
They made it so cheap. You're
just
exactly
not
right.
making as much of a profit as they were before. All right,
That's correct.
So next week, we'll talk about something crazy that's happening in our world.
And 555 Willow in West Dundee. They're proud to keep your car clean while giving back to our community.